Hi, my name is Rob Wade, and it's November 2022. I'm bringing you an updated tour of our 6x10 cargo trailer that we've converted into a location that we can do both scuba diving training as well as off-grid camping or bugging out if we really have to. As you see here, we're pulling our trailer with our 2018 Toyota 4Runner Limited Edition. We've been really pleased with the way it handles it. Have no issues towing it. It feels very comfortable. About the same as it did when we had the Dodge Nitro as well as the Suzu Rodeo that we had before that. But we've really enjoyed having this trailer as a convenience for teaching scuba diving. When I first got into scuba diving, I didn't really have an intention on becoming an instructor, but by 2008, I had been working with an instructor who really convinced me to become an instructor myself. So that's when I went through all of the rest of the training necessary and took all the testing certification to become a PADI scuba instructor. So in Del Rio, Texas, which is where we're at, we have this beautiful lake out here, but we didn't have much in the way of dive shops. We had a propane sales place that also sold some scuba gear, rented tanks, did air fills, but when I found out they were going out of business as far as the scuba side of it, and they were just going to be doing the propane side, I decided I needed to figure out a plan to be able to be independent. And that's one of the nice things about being a PADI instructor is that you don't have to have a dive shop. You maintain all the certifications, all the requirements, but you can become a totally self-sufficient, independent instructor certified through PADI. So that's when we sought out buying a trailer. Looking back, I wish we had gone with a 6x12 with a side door on it, but I didn't anticipate this is where we would go with this. Now over time, we realized that being completely mobile, that we could take the trailer just about anywhere. And one of our favorite places to go just relax and dive as well as do some teaching is Balmorhea State Park, which is about a 4-hour drive northwest from here. And having the trailer along was convenient. Of course, I could bring everything that I needed for just scuba diving, or if we were bringing the club up there, I had plenty of everything that we need. As you'll see later in the tour, have the compressor and all the student gear, etc. that you might need. But then also being able to camp out of it. We had a cooler, we had our tent that we could lay out, as well as all of the camping gear that we needed. But over time we realized that sometimes the weather's just so bad that, especially up in that part of Texas, you can get a storm come up on you really by surprise. Suddenly that tent isn't going to do it, and then having the trailer as refuge was definitely handy. Unfortunately, there wasn't really any place comfortable to sleep, so as we started to add the off-grid capability, I had to figure out some inventive ways to accommodate some of the new capabilities that we needed. Now, one of our most recent additions to the trailer has been this attached awning. We realized that while carrying around one of those 10x10 fold-up gazebos definitely has its benefits, we really needed to make as much space available within the trailer and not have to store something in there. So, as you've probably seen on many YouTube videos of van lifers, cargo trailer conversions, these awnings are inexpensive, really convenient. In this case, we found one that we could get the right size to fit the back of the trailer. And it was really easy to attach, as I'll show you a little bit later how we've got the solar panels, etc. up there. It attached the rack with no problem, and it doesn't really seem to create any problem while we're traveling once it's all rolled up. But obviously right now I've got it angled where we're in the sun, but it does make it convenient to have this when it's raining or when you need to angle it so that it provides some shade. But it's definitely been a nice addition to the trailer. Now, as we started to deck the trailer out, one of the things we realized pretty quickly on was that we were going to need some sort of a screen system. With no side door, this really at the time was the only way we were getting air in and out of the trailer, aside from the original vent that we installed, and it had no fan or anything originally. It was just one of those crank up vents that you typically see on trailers. So we went on Amazon, found a company that did custom sizing. We gave them the measurements, and really easy to attach. Velcro strips along the edges, and then it's magnetic in the center, so it's easy to enter and exit as we need to, and definitely keeps the bugs out. Originally, I just had a bungee cord stretched across and bought a typical screen that we could hang from that, and that was good enough at the time. But this makes it much more convenient because it's always there, but I can always take it down because it's easily removed via the Velcro. And then also, as you can see in the back here, I have my air compressor for filling scuba tanks. Now obviously when that's running, I have to have this open, and because the exhaust comes straight out the back, I would need to remove one half of this so it doesn't burn up or melt the plastic that the screen is made out of. And we have a tube that we feed around the outside to get the fresh air into the tank, so there's no mixing of the exhaust fumes from the compressor and fresh air going into the tanks. One of the later adaptations that we made was to raise the entire trailer by flipping the axle. We took it to a local welding shop that was able to remove the trailer axle. It's just a straight axle, and flip it upside down, so that gained us quite a bit of ground clearance. Eventually I may look into installing a large freshwater tank underneath the trailer, for which we absolutely would need the clearance. But for sure, the way it was when we originally bought it, there was not much in the way of clearance. Obviously, when we raised the trailer, that made it a little bit more difficult to climb up into the back of the trailer, and my wife is shorter than I am, so we found this on Amazon. Of course, we found this trailer RV / utility step that we're able to add, and it's very easy to work with. As you can see, it's just a main bar here, and we have pins with cotter pins attached to it, and literally all we have to do is slide it up in position, pull these pins out, slide them through holes that I drilled on either side, put the pins back in, and it stays locked in the up position, so we don't have to worry about it dragging, etc. And then we simply pull the cotter pins out, pull it back down, stick those in so we don't lose them, and it's a really low-tech, simple solution. When we originally bought the trailer, it came with zero venting. There was no vent on the top, there were no vents on the side, and there was just the doors that opened into it. You'll notice once we go inside that I've used so much of the wall space, there's not a lot left over for window space. So we had to be pretty judicious when we chose what sort of windows that we would install. So we went with the kind of the nautical theme, since this is mostly a scuba trailer, and it's worked out really well. Would I like more window space? Absolutely. But this has worked out pretty well. Here we are in the interior of the trailer, and as you can see, I have utilized virtually all the space that I possibly could. I have, of course, the scuba compressor on one side. I have plenty of storage for scuba tanks on the other side. I'll show you a little bit more how that works in a moment. Have racks on either side for all of the student as well as my personal BCs, buoyancy compensating devices, as well as the first shelf. I have lights, chemical lights, etc., additional hood, gloves, boots, those kinds of things. And then I have the regulators that you use for scuba diving. I have personal gear and type of fins, etc., as well as my shore kit that I use for training, and then some storage bins for various items that we need for the trailer. So starting from one side of the trailer to the other, as you can see, I've got some shore power installed here. So I've just got one simple conduit that runs the length of one side of the trailer. It has junction boxes, receptacles at the front and the back ends of it for plugging in 1-ton items. As you can see, I can simply connect it to the exterior of the trailer, where we have a typical port, which of course you can see here. Basic addition to the trailer, can plug in regular shore power there, And of course the seal's up so it doesn't get wet. And here's what the inside of one of the portal windows looks like. It has a simple hinge on the top. I chose to orient it that way so that in case I leave it up, vibrations would help it close down, which would be definitely helpful in case you do have some rain and forget to close it. And simple latch mechanism just screwed into place. Works out nicely. One thing it didn't come with was an actual screen, so I had to fashion a screen to add to it so that we could keep the bugs out. But it works perfectly. We haven't had any issues with it while traveling. And again, as you can see, the regulators, etc., and other scuba gear that I have, the compressor, and I'll tell you about what those are in a few minutes. But as we move on down towards the front of the trailer, you see that's one of the vents that we installed, just to, when the trailer's completely closed up, that it keeps things from overheating in here. When I first outfitted this for scuba only, I built this counter all by itself. It just had supports to it, but there was nothing really else to it. We would put the cooler underneath there. We put a crate that had all our camping gear, etc., underneath it, and they were just bungeed into place. But as we started to convert it to off-grid capability, we decided that we needed to do something additional with it. So this has been a gradual process in steps. So the first thing that we did was build the cabinet system. And we want to utilize the space the best we could, keep it as functional as possible, but make it as simple as possible. So there's 2 basic doors to it, but there's 3 compartments. So as you open it up, you can see we have food storage on one side, cooking items, etc., in the center, and then various and sundry clothing items we can put in there, as well as toiletries, etc. And again, there's 3 puck system lights, LED, 3 amp, really low power, but as you can see, they're really bright. No issues seeing what we need to see. Would I like more storage? Absolutely, but we may do with what we had. Looking in a little bit more detail of the galley area, you can see we have a very modest sink. It's not really large, but we really don't need a large one given the size of plates, pots, those kinds of things that we use, and the typical situations we need it, brushing our teeth, washing our face, hands, those kinds of things. And then of course, just took a solid bowl, cut a hole in the bottom, installed the drain. Hose is going to out the bottom and into our gray water tank, as you can see on the left, and then a tube coming up from our freshwater tank to feed into a USB powered, charged, battery operated faucet. Very simple operation. You've seen a number of variations, I'm sure, on YouTube of people doing this rather than using a separate electric pump and a normal faucet or a foot pump. We just felt this was the easiest route for us to go, and it's portable, so we can use it in other applications if we need to, because it's simply velcroed to the countertop. And of course we have our spice racks. I'll probably install some additional racks to add some more storage of food, cooking items, those kinds of things, because we've got the space and really it's not fully utilized, as you can see. And of course, paper towel rack. There's the other 110 outlet that we have. So you can see there's a wire that goes down, it connects to our inverter. So we can either connect to shore power on one end or the inverter on this end. And so if we need access to 110, we've got it. And of course there is the Bluetooth module for our Renogy MPPT charge controller. So we can connect to it wirelessly and see what's happening with the charge controller. And we would not be wise if we didn't have a carbon monoxide alarm installed as well. If we had more room, we would have more drawers, but we had to make utilization a key factor when designing this. So this is a double-decker drawer. It's got a self-closing, soft close. So the upper deck, keep our utensils, knives, some other various and sundry things, and then I'll lift up the upper deck so you can see what's underneath. So on the bottom deck we have various things for cleaning, spatulas, heavier duty cooking items. If you travel and you're want to be prepared for off-grid situations, or when everything falls apart, one of these keys is handy to be able to access water from buildings that are keyed and locked. These will allow you to open up the spigots and get water if you need to in an emergency. So that'll be handy to have if we ever get into that situation. Also in the upper deck, in case we need it, we have items for making questionable water more potable if we need to. And then we also have an adapter. You'll notice that we use the green propane tanks, propane cans, but if we ever needed to adapt to connect to a larger, like 5-pound, 10-pound tank, we'd be able to use this adapter for that. Now, as we move into winter, this device is going to be handy. The heater, not the dog food. So we have a typical, you see this again on a number of builds. Folks, if they don't use the diesel heater, they use something like a Mr. Heater, a Buddy heater. And again, works out nicely. Use the green propane tanks, which we have a ton of those. And this really does a great job, even on low, of keeping this trailer really nice and comfortable in the winter. And then of course we have some dog food there, because if we have to hit the road at the last minute, have a hurricane or some other storm coming through, we definitely want to bolt out of here quickly and not think about whether we have sustenance to hold us over till we can get additional supplies. Oh, a nice hack that we saw on YouTube that was really convenient if you have a Buddy heater. You may see on some small tiny house builds that they have a wood-burning stove, something similar, that they'll have one of these heat-driven thermoelectric fans, which are really convenient. They just take the heat that's transferred through the base, and it drives the motor to move the air, the heated air. So what we found out on YouTube was a really convenient mechanism for adapting one of these to a Buddy heater. So took a Dremel, just cut a slot in the base, as you can see there, and then simply turn it to where you can see it. To whatever degree, however far out you need it to pick up heat. And then when the heater heats up, the heat rises, of course, and it heats up the base and gets this going. And it actually blows the air really nicely. So you can set this in a corner of the trailer and get it heated up. And once that fan gets going, it moves the air in here really well. And of course, what build would be complete without having a portable potty to go with it? Of course, we could use public restrooms if we need to, but when you're on the road and you have no other choice, knowing that this is there in an emergency is be a godsend, that's for sure. Our most recent addition has been to switch from a cooler to an actual 12-volt refrigerator. I really would have liked a larger one, but I couldn't fit too much taller of a refrigerator here, given the where we had to put the plumbing for the sink. But this has worked out nicely so far. Bodega brand is well known and reliable. One of the things that I really liked about this one was that it allowed the flexibility of opening the door. It's actually got a 2-latch system. So if I want to open it this way, you can see not a huge amount of room, but adjustable shelves both inside as well as on the door. But I can also open this on the other way. I think this is a brilliant system. Now, word of caution for those who might be looking at buying this one. It has a app that you can use with it, but it really is difficult to connect with. You have to have it connect to a 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi, and then it will let you connect Bluetooth, and it does lose its connection often. So there's a process that you have to go through that's kind of painful to get it to reconnect. One other caution I forgot to mention is that the design of this has a couple of weak spots. They advertise this bottom section as a crisper, but it really isn't. It's got a door that is supposed to be magnetic, but that's not a strong enough magnet to hold it. I'm still trying to work out a mechanism that would hold it. But the rack here is it's not enclosed. It's simply a wire rack. So I'm not sure how they could call this a crisper. I think I figured out a way I could make it one. I'm looking to find some thin plastic that I can actually slide in, cut and slide in underneath this rack. And then if I can figure out a better magnetic system, then that should be able to close it up enough to make it more like a crisper. But in the meantime, this works fine. The freezer section is not very big, as you can see, but it does work. As you can see the temperatures here, you can set the freezer and the refrigerator as separate temperatures. So we have the freezer set at about 10 and the refrigerator is set to about 40. And it does a pretty good job of keeping everything cool. As you can see, that bottle of water was frozen. Now next is a little bit sketchy in the way we had to set it up, but this is the interior part of our electrical system. So we have 200 watts of solar, installed a 20 amp Renogy charge control, MPPT charge controller, and then we originally set this up with a 100 amp hour hybrid gel battery, and that just wasn't able to handle it once we installed the refrigerator. So we upgraded to a 200 amp hour lithium battery, but while it is significantly lighter, it is significantly larger. And so you can see we had to jury rig how it sits in here. But the nice thing is, since it's lithium and not acid, the orientation of the battery doesn't matter. So we have 200 amp hour Weiss, not sure how you pronounce it, battery. The light switch here. So there's our charge controller. And we've got the Bluetooth option, as you'll see in a second. 1000 watt inverter. So we can plug in, if we disconnect from shore power, we can plug in the 110 line that you see there. It extends all the way along the side of the trailer. We can connect that and plug everything in if we need to charge up laptops, those kinds of things. There's our fuse box, our switch to disconnect from everything. And then there's the Bluetooth module so that we can connect. I love using the app to monitor what's going on with power. And then of course we have a carbon monoxide detector. So in case while we're using the heater or anything else causes a carbon monoxide problem, we're alerted properly. Back up above here we have the control for the inverter. Simply push that button and that will turn on the 1000 watt inverter, so it's usable. Then we have our light switches. We have, in addition to the lights that you saw in the galley area, we have 4 of the puck lights, LED lights, work out nicely, love them. Low power usage, but definitely bright in here. So we have individual light control. So for the lights in the galley, we have one master switch, and then the lights for the overhead are here. Now, one of the nice things about the puck lights that we have installed in the galley area is that they do each have their own individual switches, whereas the cabin area does not. But as long as the switch is on, we could choose to have these lights off if we need to, individually. So again, we can conserve power to whatever degree we wish. Okay, continuing on along the other side of the trailer, of course we have our sleeping bags up here. And then next to that, we have wool blankets. As you'll see, those, we put those on the cots that we set up for our pipe berths, which I'll show you that. And then also hanging below here, we have our tent. So if there's times we really want to camp, we want to backpack in someplace, we can do that really easily. Now a toolkit, which is, you got to have a toolkit if you're going to have any kind of travel. And then the rest of the scuba equipment that we have. Now I use a just a typical cargo straps with eyelets bolted on the side of the trailer, so I can hold 5 tanks here, and then I can actually attach 5 more here. So I can teach a pretty good sized class, or I can dive for a long time if I just want to bring a bunch of tanks. But it really is convenient having my own air compressor to fill things back up. Just a kind of a catch-all rack for things, sunglasses, spare light, etc. And then of course you need to have a first aid kit if you're teaching scuba or just you're traveling. And of course you need a fire extinguisher in case something happens. And then also as an instructor, I need to have an oxygen kit so I can administer oxygen if we have an emergency. Again, another catch-all, we keep typical consumer radios. I do have some Baofeng shortwave radios, ham radios. I'm working on my certification, my license for that, but this makes it convenient to hold radios, additional lights, remote control for air conditioner. We actually have a portable stand-up air conditioner that we bring in along with us if we're traveling. And I'm not necessarily teaching a bunch of scuba, but we need some air conditioning. A very small air conditioner does really well if you got connection to shore power. It's definitely not 12 volt. And then we have our max air fan. So as you can see, we replaced the original vent, pop-up vents, crank vent that we put shortly after getting the trailer, replace it with the max air fan. Love that thing. Really convenient, remote control. You can simply turn it on and off. I love this. And you've got speed controls for it, so you can make it, right now I think I've got it set for 70%. Nope, I have it for 90%. No, 60%. And it's moving air really well. And you can set it for air coming in, air coming out. You just switch the mode. So if you have the door closed and you switch it to air out, it can vent air really nicely. And of course, having both of these portals, even with the door closed, it pulls some serious air through here. And let's bump up the speed. That's 100%. So it moves a lot of air. And then of course, you can turn it off or close the vent. You can also set it to operate based on temperatures. You can set it whatever temperature you want it to automatically activate. Now, if you lose battery power for the remote, you do have the control switches right there, the buttons right there. And then you have a manual crank for the vent if you have to use it. Now next I'm going to show you how we sleep in this trailer. So along the side we have 2 of these cots that are set up as pipe berths. So it's a really simple mechanism, pipes running through the loops of the cot, and then these 2 slot areas that we showed you before. And there we go. So the pipes simply slide into those little U supports. And it's as comfortable as a cot can be. So once you've removed the VCs from the hanging racks, you have access to the forward pipe berth position. So again, maximum use of space to allow for sleeping arrangements. And here's another view of the sleeping arrangement. Before I climb up top to show you the solar setup, the tongue box we have is a fairly small one. We wanted to keep the weight down considering all the other things that we have inside the trailer. But we have a 1400 watt sine wave generator, inverter generator here, as well as additional propane tanks for heating and cooking, tools for the trailer, various and sundry extra items that we just didn't want to store inside the trailer. But this has worked out nicely. If I were to upgrade to a larger tongue box, I couldn't go too much larger than what we have here. Here we are at the top of the trailer, so you can see how we've installed the solar panels. Right now we have the two 100 watt Renogy panels. Obviously we have room to install up to 2 more. So we could go, if we stuck with 100 watt, we could go up to 400 watts of solar. Typical cabling that comes with it, running into the trailer in the front right corner. And then you can see how we've got the awning mounted to the U-track on the back. Again, with the U-track, that makes it really easy to adjust what we have up top here. So we are looking at increasing the solar to 400 watts, so we'll probably buy 2 additional panels, which will pretty much fill up the top here. And of course you see our max air fan. A couple of final things before we wrap things up is on the left side door, looking from the rear, I have a way to mount the table that you saw that I was using. Simply installed some lower brackets and then a hooking mechanism. And we've had no issues with it remaining secure on this side. And on the opposite side, have a broom. It's an easy way, low tech, to keep things cleaned up. And we have basically some seat storage, etc. So I have a couple of folding chairs, a dive flag, a little pop-out stool, as well as heavy-duty 30 amp capable cord. So this brings us to the end of our updated tour of their 6x10 converted trailer to handle both scuba diving as well as off-grid capability. Hope you got some ideas or were entertained at all by our approach here, bringing the best of 2 worlds together. Again, thank you to all the many YouTubers out there that have shown your various builds and how you did things. You definitely were inspiration to how we approach things here. Still have more ideas that we can implement here, but we're running out of room and running out of weight. So if you have any questions or comments, you're invited to hit the like button, as well as subscribe if you want to. Again, no pressure here. Just glad to have you along for the ride. Take care.